Hello, good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are listening to this broadcast. My name is Naishad Gadani, and I'm coming to you from a cold, chilly, overcast Melbourne. And this is the 247th episode of Career Care Package, a LinkedIn show that me and Caroline Brown started at the start of the pandemic. And mind you, we are still in the pandemic. We have not yet out. I've said that many times, but I don't think so. Melbourne is out as much as we wanted it to be. But yes, my guest today is, Sharon. And Sharon and we started to talk about resilience last week. And you know what happened? Everything went just pear shaped. Let's put it that way. I had to restart my internet because it was absolutely shocking. So hopefully we have crossed our fingers. Hopefully everything goes well, on today's show. But we would love to hear about resilience. It's a word that, as I stated in my introduction of LinkedIn post, that pivot and resilience are two words that has been used over and over period of time. Pivot in terms of how to pivot to doing something different, and resilience. I think we have been all tested in various aspects, emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually. We've been tested left, right, and center. So that's what we are here to unpack those things and see. Love to hear from Sharon about some of the strategies that we could use moving forward. So, Sharon, welcome to the LinkedIn Live show, and please tell us about your journey of becoming a resilience expert.
Thank you so much for having me again. I think perfect that I think we've demonstrated some resilience from last week to this week. We've learnt from whatever happened last week and we've backed up and here we are again. So, I mean, we've demonstrated resilience here. So, thank you so much for having me again. So, my story is I come from a background of training in leadership and management. Did that for about 15 years, delivering accredited leadership programs to a range of different industries.
Hmm.
So, my interest or my passion is definitely in the leadership space. And it was in that sort of, I guess, pivoting into my own business, which is Step In Coaching, which I continue to work in that leadership space, predominantly one-on-one in coaching. But this topic of resilience kept coming up time and time again, actually before the pandemic. And I was always looking for some sort of theory or some sort of model that really resonated with the practicalities of understanding what resilience is and how we can grow it. And it was in that search that I literally stumbled across Catherine Jackson's book, Resilience at Work. And I loved the book because it's practical. It
Mm,
provides a model, but it provides a practical tool
mm,
in what resilience is, understanding what resilience is, why we need it, and how we build it. And
mm.
and that's how I've come to incorporating it into my work that I do now as a leadership coach and in facilitating programs around leadership,
Mm,
whether that be leadership of teams or whether that be leadership of self. And so this element of resilience just is threaded through everything that we do, for sure, in everyday life.
absolutely, absolutely. So tell us about what are your anecdotal observations for last 2.5 years, especially, going through 2, 3 lockdowns, and also your work with leaders and individuals that you've seen. What kind of things really keeps coming up and over again?
Well, as you say, this word resilience definitely has in some ways a little over the word resilience. And
Mm,
it's something that plays on my mind as well. And I'm definitely more mindful of, I want us to work on our well-being, because if we work on
mm,
our well-being, it will build resilience. So it's quite
okay.
interesting that people are sort of a bit over that word resilience. And I guess we can unpack that a little bit more as to why. But it's interesting because I think the world over these last couple of years, the world has changed from quite a micro or sorry, from a macro to a micro. So the world
mm,
globally literally has changed. But if we bring that back individually to ourselves, things in our own little worlds have also changed quite dramatically as well. And I think it's interesting. We can, I often hear people raising issues about, their anxiety about their work. Will they continue to
mm,
have a job in the organization that they were in? Maybe people are starting to feel or have felt lonely working from
mm.
home. Do I want to go back to the office? That raising a
Yep.
level of concern or anxiety. People are taking leave, extended
Mm,
leave from work now that they can, because they want to now explore other paths. Productivity, the nature of productivity has changed. So I think there's been
mm,
lots of things going on for people. And added to that, or I guess at the same time, people have found a different understanding of what brings them happiness and
mm,
what brings them satisfaction. So it's not across the board, people are necessarily thinking, oh, this is all doom and gloom
mm,
coming out of these last couple of years. In fact, and they're not necessarily saying, the world is great and my life's great. It's just different. Some
mm,
people have found more of a sense of meaning in their lives. Some
mm,
people are still exploring that. And
mm,
I think that has been an overarching thing that I've heard and
mm,
seen time and time again, that we've had these periods of time where we have experienced some of these things that I've just mentioned, and we've sort of started to look at, well, what matters most for me, and what do I want to do with that?
mm,
I've had opportunity perhaps to reflect on my work. I've had opportunity to reflect on my life. What have I learned about that? And what am I going
mm,
to do with it? And I think that's the interesting thing, because some
mm.
people have become more clear in what matters most out
Yep.
of this time. Yep, they want to work from home, or no, they don't want to work from home. They want to work less
Mm,
hours. They want to work more
mm,
hours. All of
mm.
those sorts of things. Some people have been able to process that and make changes in whatever they want to, do. But for other people, it hasn't been that clear cut. They've sort of gone, okay, well,
Yeah.
this is what I want. Now, what do I do with that? So I think
Mm,
there's been a couple of different pathways that people have sort of taken. I think the
mm,
other interesting thing that stands out for me in that, um, resilience isn't something that, just because we've had a tough time these last few years,
mm.
resilience isn't something that, okay, well, we've got to work on right now.
Yeah.
Resilience is something we've got to continue to work on
Mm,
every single day, whether we were working on it before the pandemic, or whether during the pandemic, or whether we're working on it now. It
mm,
needs to be something that we continually work on.
mm.
So for me, that's probably the theme I've
Yeah.
heard from people in the work that I do with people, and in
Mm.
conversations I've had with people. That's sort of, I think, that would summarize, the collective learning we've had around resilience in these last few years.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you say is that, we continuously, kind of build that muscle of resilience. I think last week we, spoke about how as a child, you start to, fail in, you're learning to bicycle or learning to play cricket, or you get, footy, whichever sport, whatever pursuit that you have, but you bounce back very quickly. But eventually, people feel so much that you've got kind of, a meaning attached to that. Now you are a, and then you lose that, let the learning mindset completely, and you get focused on, oh, I should look great and I should not look as a failure and everything else. How does that, do you think that that's a reasonable way of seeing that we lose our resilience along the way, and then we got to work hard again to go back to relearn those things?
Absolutely. I think we get in a comfort zone, really. As
Mm,
children, we're always, I guess, pushing the boundaries. We want to learn new things, we want to take on new things. It's all exciting. But as we grow up, I think we sort of sit back and go, oh no, I'm comfortable here. I've learned enough. I don't need to learn anything else. I'm going to sit back and relax. And we end up in this bit of a comfort zone. And I guess the longer we sit in that, the harder,
mm,
you know, we lose reason to push ourselves out of that comfort zone.
mm,
And so, often that is when this word resilience comes in,
mm,
that, oh, something new happens. I've been in my comfort zone for so long, something new happens, or someone asks me to do something new. Oh, I can't do that.
mm,
We've adopted, well, not only are we in this comfort zone, but we've adopted this mindset. Well, this is as good as it really gets.
mm,
I don't want to do anymore. I can't get
mm.
any better. And so we lose that traction around building this resilience muscle. And I think, as you said, I mentioned that last week, that we've got to keep working on this resilience muscle.
Mm,
Just like any other muscle in our
mm.
body, if we don't work on it, we're going to go to use it one day and it's not going to be there. And
Yeah.
resilience is the classic. If we think about pre-pandemic, how often
Mm,
were we working on that resilience muscle, so that when we ended up in the pandemic, we
yeah.
had something to draw upon, and that's
True.
where I think we've become a little bit unstuck, that we worked
Mm,
out that, hang on, I haven't worked on my resilience muscle here. So I think as adults, it's something that we really need to put the spotlight on. And I
yeah.
think, um, again, I think there was some sense of people didn't know how to.
Mm,
Um, how do I build this muscle? And
mm,
again, that's why I kept looking for some practicalities that people can take on board, around, well, how can I build this muscle up
mm,
again? I'm in my comfort zone and as an adult, but I know I want to move out of that comfort zone every
mm,
now and then. So what do I actually do?
yeah.
And I think that's where our mindset towards growth, our mindset
Mm,
towards, moving outside of the comfort zone every now and then
mm,
is so important. And then, making some choices to go, okay, well, what do I need to actually do here? So
mm.
I think, sometimes that breaking of the habit is the hardest thing to do. Would you agree?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right that we kind of, lot of us drew from kind of a bank of resilience muscle that we never used. And it's like a fixed deposit that it was there in a bank, and then suddenly something happened and we kind of started to draw that. But I feel that, we don't know how to refill that, or we don't know how, because lot of things in my view that we learn um, by default, or we learn as we go along, we don't necessarily have developed an understanding of how do I repeat this, or how do I continuously do this, right? So can we probably focus more on the practical aspects, that how do one build resilience? What are some of the things or activities or practical things people can do? And also, I would also love if you can also talk about in the context of career too, life, and but also context of career as well, because you have worked with many people in organizations and leaders who struggle with not just about themselves, but also other people around them, because they are responsible for so many other people around them.
Absolutely. I think, I want to start by saying that one of the most critical things I think people can do as human beings is acknowledge for themselves that they deserve this. They
Mm,
deserve their well-being. They deserve to look after themselves. And I
mm,
say that intentionally because I think some people have this feeling that, oh, I don't deserve that. I don't have time for
mm,
that. I'll do it later on, or I'll do it after I've supported somebody else's well-being. But I really think I want people to start with, I deserve this. I deserve to
mm,
look after
mm,
myself. I
mm,
deserve to build this muscle.
mm,
And I think, whether we're talking, people are looking at their career, whether they're, in a job that they love and they want to maintain that or stay there. I think regardless, I think people need to, sort of acknowledge for themselves, I deserve this. I deserve to look
mm,
after myself and to build my muscle.
mm,
So when we look at the practicalities around resilience, I want us
mm,
to think about, I think I shared last week, and I'm not sure if it came through or not, but I'll try again. But I think I shared with you the analogy of learning how to ride a bike.
Mm.
And, if we jump on that bike in our comfort zone where, well, maybe we don't want to learn something and we fall off, we may kick that bike aside and go, nah, never doing that again. That's too hard. Not going to, don't even want to waste my time type thing. And we stop ourselves literally from moving forward as
Yep.
you would on a bike. And so if we think about that in our careers, if we think about that in our life day to day, I really want to empower people to get back on that bike. And they
Mm.
can do that by choosing their mindset as to, well, I want to get back on this bike. It could be fun. I mean, imagine the adventures I might be able to have. This could be a good thing.
Yep.
Um, but there's lots of different things that we can do to learn to get back on that bike, whether that be talking to other people or watching something or
Mm.
reading something. And so that's the sort of thinking I ask people to bring to this
Mm.
resilience muscle. So there's probably the practicalities that Catherine Jackson shares in her book, Resilience at Work. She shares there's 4 foundations, if you like, for building resilience and our well-being. And I want to share them with you now because I
Please.
think they're so important. The first one is around emotional honesty. And our
Mm.
emotional honesty incorporates our mindset. So as I touched on previously, what is our mindset here? Are we looking at have we adopted a growth mindset where we're willing to learn from situations? We're willing to learn, well, why did I fall off that bike? What's it going to take for me to get back on? Or
Mm.
maybe what can we learn? I was having a conversation with someone just today where she has left an organization, left a role in
Mm.
an organization that didn't go as well as she would like. She was
Mm.
excited when she first took on the role, then found that she didn't like it. And I said to her, well, how can we reflect on that so
Mm.
that you can try and find a better alignment or a better role next time?
Mm.
So it's this mindset that, okay, well, it didn't work out this time, but it might
Yeah.
work out next time. How can I learn to grow from this
Mm.
situation? So our emotional honesty also incorporates obviously our emotions or our feelings, and that's
Mm.
very important when we think about, if you think about that resilience as a muscle. if we
Mm.
don't if we don't explore our emotions, if we don't explore how we're feeling and we suppress them, physically that's going to take its toll on our body.
Mm.
Physically it's going to restrict us from really building that muscle.
Yep.
So our emotional honesty is about really tuning in and taking notice of how we're feeling, talking
Mm.
to others about that, whether that be fear about what's coming up, whether that's be worry, or even whether that's happiness or excitement. But
Mm.
really being honest with ourselves with how we're actually feeling. The next one is self-care, and self-care is such an important part. All
Mm.
4 of these are important. And I want to dismiss straight away, I'm not talking self-care of I need to take myself for a massage or I need to have a
Mm.
weekend away. Not talking about those things at all. I'm talking about those micro self-care things that we can do every
Mm.
single day to build that muscle. And that could be starting the day with a good morning ritual. It could be ending the
Mm.
day with a good bedtime ritual. It
Mm.
could be literally stopping and having, a cup of tea and actually drinking it while it's hot, not rushing around trying to do, a couple of things at once. These self-care things are really, really important. And I talk a lot
Yeah.
to people I work with about micro self-care,
Mm.
taking care of ourselves in micro ways that will all add up. And I think,
Mm.
again, when we're talking about in our work with supporting people in their careers,
Mm.
whether that be in changing roles, finding roles, that self-care becomes so important because that's going to support you to move out of that comfort zone. Can
Mm.
you imagine if you're in the comfort zone where, okay, I'm not going to push myself out. It's all very comfortable here. It's all safe here.
Yeah.
But I need to push myself out. I need to have a job interview. I need to go out there and connect with people and meet new people. If I'm not looking after myself physically, mentally,
Mm.
and emotionally through self-care, I'm going to find it hard to move out of that comfort zone. So we
Absolutely.
need to be doing those little things all the
Mm,
time to support us. This includes getting enough sleep,
mm.
eating healthy food, moving our body, all of those sorts of things, whatever it takes. I'm a, I'm I make no apologies that when I get on this topic of self-care, I feel like I go on a bit of a rant because
That's okay. I think they are important topics.
I just feel that sometimes people just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and
Mm,
fall over in a heap because they haven't done the
mm,
self-care along the way.
mm.
Okay. And that's why it needs to be something that we're doing every single day. We need to make it a
Yeah.
part of a habit or part of a routine. Our connecting with others,
Mm.
if we think back to our lockdown days here in Melbourne, that element of not being able to connect with people face to face, I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but it was hard work, as
Mm.
much as these sorts of connections are really important and we became good at that
Yeah.
globally.
Yeah. Agree.
It's not the same. We really it really tested us
Mm.
about our self-care and our resilience in that sense of well-being, not being able to connect with others. So connecting with others is such
Mm.
an important part because it releases those chemicals within our body that
Mm.
help us feel good.
Mm.
Okay. And so if you think about just those little tiny self-care things that you can be doing, that could
Mm.
be as simple as walking down the street and having eye
Yeah.
contact with someone and saying hello. So you've sort of ticked off a few boxes there in terms of emotional honesty, self-care, and
Mm.
connecting, all with that quite simple, straightforward action, walking down the
Yeah.
street. So this
Yeah.
connecting is such an important part.
Mm.
Finding your tribe, finding
Mm.
people that are in your corner that can support you, again, is so important. And I think even in Catherine's writing of the book and in her research, what came through time and time and time again is rather than waiting until we're in a pandemic or
Mm.
rather than waiting till life's getting a bit hard, perhaps we're in between jobs, we're not working, rather than
Yeah.
waiting till those tough times, we need to build our connections regularly. We need
Yeah.
to make sure we keep in contact with our family and friends. We need to keep in contact perhaps with people that we've worked in the past. We need to build new connections.
Mm.
In whatever way we need to do it,
Mm.
this concept of connecting with others is such an important thing that we
Yeah.
need to be able to do. Okay. And so we need to be very intentional in our connections and we need
Mm.
to have meaningful connections.
Mm.
And I'd love in Catherine's work this concept of knowing who's in our corner when things are really tough,
Mm.
but then we've got also people we know that are there, but we don't always have to rely on them all the time, but we just feel that sense of safety that we know that they're still there.
Yeah.
And so I think, we when I know when Catherine first put it to me, I was a bit like, oh, I'm not really sure I can consider it in this way. But we almost need to do a bit of a reflection or a bit of an audit around our
Yeah.
connection. Who's there? Why are they there? How can we build new ones?
Mm.
Particularly when people are looking in their careers about growing in their careers, perhaps changing jobs or getting new jobs. It's those
Mm.
connections that could open some doors to new opportunities. So this sense of building connections and maintaining those connections is
Mm.
so important. And then the fourth foundation from Catherine's work is this concept of learning.
Mm.
Now, this means it doesn't mean that we have to learn something new all the time.
Yep.
Okay, it's not that thinking. It comes back to this growth mindset that we're
Mm.
open to learning, that we're willing to learn, that we don't look at things as, oh, I've tried it once and I'll never be able to do
Yeah.
that again. It's if we go back to that bike concept that we're happy to get back on that bike and try again. And that's what learning needs to be about.
Mm.
It's also about reflecting
Mm.
on situations that have happened.
mm,
situations that happened, earlier today or last week or last month or a
yeah,
few years ago, whatever it might be. But it's about learning from the past, and how can we
mm,
take that into the future. Um, and now another analogy I use with people in my work is people encouraging people to see their life as a book with different chapters, and
okay,
that things that have happened to date in their life are those different
mm,
chapters. Some chapters might be hard work and challenging. Some chapters
yeah,
might be a lot easier or smoother or happier. It's not to say that one chapter is better or
better than, yeah,
whatever, but it's more about understanding that these chapters make up your life. And when people are
mm,
looking at making a change, perhaps in their career, and they're
mm,
looking at, well, what do I want to do? Where's my strengths? I
mm,
ask people to consider, well, let's look at the past. Let's look at some past chapters. Let's
mm,
identify, things that you've enjoyed doing and what you were doing and then and who you
mm,
were with, because that can help your future chapters. You are writing,
mm,
you're in control of your life here in some
mm,
ways, that you can, write those future chapters. And so this concept of learning becomes
mm,
such an important part of that, about
mm,
understanding who we are, what we can take from that, and help,
mm,
craft our future lives, whether that's our
mm,
job or our personal lives. So
mm.
I've very quickly gone through those four
That's
buckets.
really amazing. I think that that really gives us lot of pointers, and I really liked your, kind of how do you convert that concept into a practice,
Mm,
or a habit, something
yes.
that you can do. And I think you know, I can relate to almost all of them. All of them would have practiced that, or we can see that, wow, that's one of the simplest way that we could do it. But now, not knowing that these are some of the things that helps us to build that muscle, and I think that's equally important, is this awareness about, okay, if I'm going to do this, it really collectively builds my ability to bounce back, my ability to respond to tough situations, and that's very important. As I was, in the last week, I mentioned about the a keynote that I was a part of at the National Conference, Career Development Association, and speaking to the chief fire officer at that time, which was in 2020 firefight and the following floods from New South Wales, and he heads the New South Wales Resilience Task Force, and he talked about that. He's dealt with some extraordinary emergencies, right? And he has seen how communities really deal with this idea of resilience, and how do they gather their families, and how do they do that. Just seen, just mind-boggling stuff. But he said that when we talk about resilience, he wanted people to move not from the original position that they started from, but bit better than that. Because if you bounce back to the same position as you were, you haven't learned anything. You've not elevated from that. What do you see about that definition?
I absolutely love that and completely agree that, if we are really incorporating and trying to build this muscle, literally, we're going to look different because that muscle is growing. We're going to have perhaps a different mindset, or a different feel, a different look, whatever it might be. And when I say that, I'm not suggesting that people are going to change dramatically. It could only be something small, but that's something small that, that has such a dramatic impact on the future, as I just said, in relation to that next chapter in their life. I mean, that analogy you share is just amazing. If you think about what people have gone through in the last few
Yeah,
years, what people went through bushfires and floods.
yeah.
um, to be honest, I am a very curious person
Mm,
around people's stories, particularly
mm,
people that have gone through hard things,
mm,
and it's quite interesting because I can reflect when I listen to what people go through and I read what
mm,
people go through. I can see them linking back to those four
mm,
areas that Catherine
mm,
identified in her research. I mean,
mm.
her book was written on research about after the earthquakes in Christchurch in New Zealand.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, again, a very difficult and hard time. And that research was about understanding, well, why do some people survive whereas
Yeah.
others will thrive? And
Yeah.
that lends itself back to this concept that we don't just bounce back to where we were before. We
Mm,
actually can grow from
mm,
situations.
mm.
And I think, that also lends itself to this metaphor that I was saying about the riding of the bike,
Yeah.
because if we get back on that bike, we are going to move forward. We're going to move forward. It might only
Yeah.
be a couple of meters, it might be a
Agree.
couple of kilometers, but
Mm,
we're in essence, we're bouncing back, we're bouncing forward
mm,
to grow from whatever we've been through.
mm,
So I really, really like that. I think the interesting thing is, I think not everyone feels safe
mm.
sometimes to reflect on those hard times.
Agree.
If to be honest, I think we need to be ready to reflect
Mm,
on that. And I know
mm,
that in the coaching work that I do one on
mm,
one,
mm,
people need to be ready to do that.
mm,
For some people, whatever their hard or challenging situation that they needed to get through, for
mm,
some people, that takes a while to be able to reflect on
mm.
that.
Yeah.
And they need sometimes, whether it's someone external like a coach like myself, or a
Mm,
close friend or whoever it might be, they need someone to create that environment where they can feel safe to unpack whatever it is that hard thing has been, that challenging thing that has been. And
mm,
even in other stories that I read about challenging things that people have been through, that time for reflection is
mm.
different for everybody.
Agree.
And so, you know, it might be easy for us to sit back and say, oh, well, this is what they should grow and learn from that situation. But it needs to be something individual. It needs to be something
Absolutely.
personal,
Yeah.
and so that for me then taps into this or these elements around building our resilience, in that it is personal.
Mm,
How I build my muscle and how you build your muscle is probably completely different. And
absolutely.
that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's where I like the practicality
Mm,
of Catherine's work,
mm,
because it empowers people to understand those four different
mm,
foundations. It empowers people to identify, well, what do they need?
mm.
It's not about, as much as I like to rant about self-care, it's not about you need to do these things because that's
Yeah.
what works for me. It's about finding things that work for people
Work for you.
personally.
Yeah.
A classic line that we use in the work by Catherine is that you can't outsource your well-being. You
That
can't
is so true.
you can't say to someone else, you can't pay someone else to
To
come
go
in and
on.
look after your own. I mean, if we go back to this resilience is a muscle, it makes complete sense.
Absolutely. You can't ask somebody to go and run and say, you know what, I think that's the kind of, and it was very early on that, you know, I was guilty of using the same, phrase that we are all in the same boat, which was so inaccurate in given the pandemic. And then somebody said that we are in different boats, but we are in same storm, and which
Mm,
made a lot of sense. So what you're talking about is that the individuals process that reflection, the idea of reflection. Someone can take 1 hour to reflect on it, and someone can take 1 year, and that's fine. In this whole process of emotional honesty, which is the first step that you talked about, which is fine. Some people will take their time, and that's also proportional to how urgent the thing is, or how pressing that situation is, or how much the future is compelling enough for them to do things. rather
Yes.
than, so I think it's a, it's not as easy as you rightly pointed out. Because I watched that, I think last month itself, they had the ABC Four Corners report on these flood, and sitting there and said, yeah, you know what, this is just beyond. This is like, I have absolutely zilch expertise to go and tell people what to do. Like two times being, flooded, and everything is just the complete wreck. Yeah. So I think that, but you also need that amount of awareness to acknowledge.
I think that's the really interesting thing,
Mm,
in that what you just said is true. Like, I can watch and look at those people and go, how can they possibly get through another situation
yeah.
like this? Um, and that's the interesting thing, where it's not about telling people. And I think this is where people are over this phrase,
Mm,
you need to be more resilient.
mm,
People need to know how to be more resilient. So
yeah.
telling anyone that's been through something challenging, oh, we just need to get back on the bike, you need to be more resilient, it's not going to work. We need to be
Mm,
able to empower people to talk about
mm,
why they need to try,
mm,
and
mm,
how they need to do it, and allow
mm,
people that autonomy to go, okay, well, this is what I need. This is what I need to be able to get through this
yeah.
situation. Because
Yeah.
again, watching people that go through, so many hard and difficult things in life, I guess my automatic reaction is I just want to go in and give someone a hug.
Hug. True.
Um, and
Absolutely.
sometimes for some people that might be enough. That might be enough to uh, to encourage them to take
Mm,
some next steps. But that's not going to
yeah.
work for everybody. So
Yeah.
I think that is where
Mm,
I really want people, anyone that's listening, I really want them to take on board that, think about this as a muscle in your body.
mm,
You need to work. You know what your body, your muscle needs.
yeah.
Own it.
Mm,
Take on board that you deserve to build this muscle, and you can build this muscle. You've got to make that choice. Hopefully, whatever I've shared, and thank you again for this conversation, but whatever I've shared here is encouraging people to go, okay, yeah, I do need to work on this, because
mm,
as we've said, it's not about working on resilience when times get tough. It's on about working on resilience now. So we might think, okay, we're out of the worst of the pandemic,
yeah.
we're out of lockdown, then, oh,
Yeah.
everything's all smooth. But we know that life is full of ups and downs.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We know that. And so to be better prepared
Mm,
and to be more confident,
mm,
just keep working on these little things that we can be doing around our well-being now,
mm,
every
mm,
single day. I
yeah.
think that is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. If, we're coming to an end. I wanted to ask you one more question about you. You mentioned about who is in your corner. In Can you elaborate on that? Because that and also finding your tribe, because that's something that I think, you can only know your tribe when you are in trouble.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't you
yeah.
don't know your
But
tribe when you're
you know
throwing a
what?
party.
That but that is part of that learning and reflective
Mm,
practice, that when we go through tough things, when we go through challenging things, who was there to support you? Who were you
mm,
able to call upon,
mm,
that was there for whatever support you needed?
mm,
And so that's where this concept, I mean, I work as a coach, and I use that thinking that, I'm in your corner there. I'm in your corner
mm,
when you're going to have a bit of a break and come and say, Sharon, what do I need? What do I need? And I can give some guidance there.
yeah.
And that's how I want people to think about their connections.
Mm,
I guess the other thing I want to point out with our connections, and this could be challenging for some people to listen to, but within our connections, there's going to be people that really spark joy for us. There's
mhm,
people that's going to bring us positive energy,
Hmm.
encourage us, build our confidence, all of those positive energy things.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be connections that actually zap all of that away.
Yeah.
And I'm not meaning, I'm not want to be critical here,
Sure.
but what I ask is people to stop and think about that. It's not
Mm.
to say that I'm asking people to cancel out their friends. I'm not saying that.
Sure.
But just stop and reflect. There's sometimes people in our lives that actually zap our energy away, and we walk away afterwards feeling a bit blah, like they've taken
Yeah.
all our energy away. And so if we are already feeling that we're stuck in a situation, then they're probably not the best people that you want to have in your corner. They're
Yeah.
not going to be the people that you're going to ring in that tough time,
Yeah.
um, for support. They
Yeah.
could be those connections when things are running smoothly that you want to catch up for. That's great. But that's about understanding who your connections are,
Yeah.
um, and really knowing who is in your corner.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those and let's also point out that those people could be from all different walks of life. You
Agree.
know, if we think about in our careers, they could be people that we worked with in the past. They
Mm.
could be, friends that we've had for long
Mm.
periods of time. They could be friends that we've only known for a short period of time.
Yeah.
But, considering your connections across a whole different, um, a broad understanding, I think is really, really important.
Yeah. 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 That makes such a big difference, tribe and connections. I think a lot of people
Mm,
have relied on that, especially in last 2.5 years,
absolutely.
on those. And people have suffered in silence, and
Mhm.
because they've not been able to go out and not been able to do what they love to do, and everything else with it. But yeah, look, Sharon, it's been absolutely amazing, and thankfully our internet, both our sides, internet has stayed strong, so we could really complete a great conversation on resilience. And yeah, so if people want to connect with you, what's the best way? If they are looking for some help, what's the
The
best way?
best way is please connect with me through LinkedIn. That's probably a great place to see whatever I'm posting, to see whatever's relevant in the world of resilience and well-being. Me on LinkedIn. Also, you can contact me via email, which is stepinsk@bigpond.com.
Sure,
They're
I'll
probably
put the
the
link
two
also in the
easiest
web,
ways.
in the chat bag. Okay, excellent. I'll also
Absolutely.
put Sharon's link, the LinkedIn link as well in the chat box as well. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone. And Sharon, once again, thank you very much for coming along and sharing the amazing
Thank
work of
you. Thank
resilience that
you.
you do. And also, it's been absolutely
Wonderful. Thank you
amazing.
so much.
Pleasure, pleasure. And next week would be 248th episode. Hopefully, Caroline will be back by then. But next week, we are going to talk with Gauri Gokhale. And she's a senior recruitment consultant. We are going to dive deep into what our recruitment consultant looking for now. What has been the impact of pandemic on recruitment game, especially from job seeker point of view. So do tune in tomorrow, not tomorrow, next week, Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. Until then, have a great rest of the week, everyone, and bye for now.